We weren't recording.
That's
Jesus
totally,
Christ.
God, that was so
It
scary.
happens.
I know it happened.
It happens.
Okay, here we go. Last one.
Yeah.
Dead gum. Okay. I'm so glad I realized that. Good Lord.
Yeah, that was a good catch.
Hello, my name is Hamlet Dobbins, and this is Memphis Material, an oral history project chronicling the stories of the visual arts in Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis Material is a podcast celebrating the personal histories, the intimate stories, and the studio practices of some of the people who help shape the creative landscape of our city. The unedited interviews are all recorded at the Memphis Listening Lab in the Crosstown Concourse. The website is designed by the wonderful Brian Dixon. This is sort of take two. I did it again where I forgot to press the button. Today is Wednesday, March 26th, and this is part 3 of the interviews with Lawrence Matthews. And one of the things we were talking about in the seconds before I pressed the record button again was Lawrence's first year out of school and what that looked like. And so talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we were talking about this is like the whole. That's so great when that happens. It's like imagine doing that like recording like music.
Oh my God. Yeah,
It's like you just yeah, it's different. Oh, but no, after I graduated, it was this kind of weird thing. We were talking about the Arts Accelerator grant and like what, project I tried to work on, which I was like, hey, I think this is more like me continuing my work. I had, just graduated doing these kind of collage based wood panel paintings with black oil paint. And yeah, I wanted to kind of continue that work. And I also was like trying to figure out what it meant to like be a visual artist out in the world. Like, so I, was courting and flirting with different galleries. And, at the time, there's Gallery 56 around. There was David Luss is obviously around. L. Ross was obviously around. So, like as a young, ambitious whippersnapper or whatever it is, I was like, I want to try to figure out how to be in these spaces, in these places. And I think shortly after that, Gallery 56 closed. So that was the thing. I was like, God, because I really, really liked Gallery 56. I liked the location, I liked everything. And they were really, really kind to me early, like very early, while I was still in school. And so I was looking forward to that. And then also like was, talking to David Lust, and I didn't really go over to L. Ross. I think like the subject matter of my work was like too heavy handed for that space. And the location and all these things. And so that's kind of what I was on, was that, and then trying to figure out, okay, grants and things like that. And that's how the Arts Accelerator thing happened. And I can't even remember who mentioned it to me to try to pursue, but I didn't even have like Facebook at the time. I remember like that being the thing. I got Facebook because of the Arts Accelerator grant, because I needed to, which maybe this is all bad stuff to say, but like I needed to campaign. And like I don't know, man. Like if you're trying to do a thing a certain way, like it's not to say that like to be an artist is to have to like do all this other shit, right? But like if you at the time, like I did, wanted to be great or considered great, or like to have the opportunities or the accolades, or like to create the resume or whatever it is, it's like you kind of have to campaign on behalf of your art. And so that means you have to like be present everywhere, and you have to do all these things, and you have to know everybody, and everybody has to know you, and you have to like do that. And what I had learned was the kind of creative synergy and how everybody knew what was happening was on Facebook. And all the professors, all the students, everybody who was anybody at that particular time was on the kind of localized Facebook thing and like these groups and stuff. And like I remember like spending like a week like getting my account set up and like uploading everything that I had ever done like in the years prior. So like when people went to my page, they could immediately see that like I was this artist, and like I created all these photos, and I think they still exist, all like way at the bottom or something. It's like all my art from 2013, all my art from like it's like all those things. But that was like what I was very much like focused on, was like trying to campaign for this grant that I knew was, and there's no disrespect to nobody, right? Like it's just politics, like everything's politics. And so this is year 2015, right? And there isn't that much color in the things, right? And like I'm young and new and fresh, and I'm like I need to take advantage of that, because that won't always be here. And we talked about that last time, like getting older in the arts. And like, yeah, like I friended every person that was listed on that whole thing. And like, that's how I got to know a lot of people too. And I made sure that if any of those people, and it was genuine, right? It was like, I love art. I love going to see art. But I also was strategic at the same time and being like, yo, such and such on this voting committee has an exhibition. I'm going to be there, right? I'm going to look at the work. I'm going to study the work. I'm going to get to know their work. I'm going to get to know them. I'm going to have a conversation with them. And it's not like anything was fake or anything like that. It's just like I didn't know nothing. And so it was like, yo, you can't come out here and like want things and then not know the landscape that you're in or the people who exist in it who, 5-10 years ago were in your spot or 20 years ago were in your spot. Now they're in this position where they're making decisions about, what the future of this looks like. And it's like, if I felt like I was the future of that, then I needed those people to be aware of who I was. And so, yeah, I went like on, I don't know how many months of campaigning so I could, just so I could be ever present, right? It's like everybody campaigns, the Grammys campaign, like everything, you have to do it, right? And so, yeah, that's kind of what I was doing. And I think there was two other things that helped that. The Dean's Creative Achievement Award, getting that helped. And then, yeah, like the Department of Art Creative Achievement Award, that helped, which was its own kind of rigorous process that kind of prepared me for what the Arts Accelerator grant process would look like. And so, like, it all kind of happened from what I remember all around the same time. It was like, first 6 months of 2015. And then, like, I ended up getting gallery representation and then having a solo show that summer. And so, there's like all this kind of culmination of energy and things, like, manifested in a way where it was like, yeah, me getting the grant. And shout out to the people who like campaigned for me to get that grant, right? Like it wasn't just so easy, right? There was people, who were on the board who, fought for that or whatever. I believe Lester Mayer, whether it was one of the people who was fighting for that because he was on the voting committee as well. But later on, he ended up, kind of telling me and being like, yo, like, yeah, we were pushing, you know what I mean? Like we wanted you to be able to have this thing because if, it just sets a precedent, right? Like it's like me not getting that $5,000 in that particular year makes my year go different, makes my life go different, makes so many things go different. So I appreciate anybody who like voted or fought for that. If it was a tight race or whatever it is, it's like whatever pushed it over the edge. Like I'm very thankful for it because things could have been very different. You know what I mean? So yeah.
So now, during that time, you're maintaining your own studio practice. You're also sort of balancing your life in between music and visual arts. And then when was it that doing the murals started to happen?
That started to happen 2016, 17. Specifically like 17. I think I maybe got my first commission in 16. And it's like, so I think it was also 2015 where I worked on this show. It was me, Lester, Vitus Shell, some other artists. Birdcap was in it. It was a few other folks, but they were this collaborative kind of project through Arts Memphis. From what I remember, I think it was through Arts Memphis. And we were like essentially in this cold ass warehouse downtown with big giant canvases coming in different shifts working on pieces. It was very like Andy Warhol and Basquiat, like just somebody, you come in, somebody painted over everything you did. And then you paint over that. And then they paint over that. And it's just like, it was so interesting. And I maybe was only there with the artists a few times. Like I know Birdcap, I'm good friends with Birdcap now. I don't think we saw each other, but we worked on pieces together. Like it's just like, it's the same thing with Vitus. Like I knew Vitus at the time and like we talked and stuff. But basically with that show, is how I learned about kind of public art things because Vitus was doing murals and Lester, I think, had gotten a commission for a lot of money. And so I was hearing them kind of discuss these things. And I'm not going to lie, the money was a big, giant motivator at the time because I was broke. I was on food stamps or whatever. So it was like I was really, really messed up. And so it was like, yo, I'm doing big, giant paintings. And at the time, I did not like my gallery. Which I realized very quickly and within signing the contract. It's like one of those things, like you sign your contract and it's like everything falls apart after that. So it's like I signed the little contract, I was locked in for a year, and then I was like, oh, this isn't gonna work and I can't make this body of work because it's connected to this thing. And so I started like experimenting and doing a bunch of different other things and like selling. And again, I don't care now, nobody can fight me now, but it's like I was selling work like under the table. I was doing all kind of stuff to sustain myself because the gallery wasn't doing it for me. And
Now,
yeah,
tell me about these paintings that you did with this powerhouse team.
Yeah.
P.S. I'm totally jealous. I want to make paintings with Lester and with Birdcap and with Vitus and you.
it was interesting.
Now, talk to me about that. Like, so you were saying that they sort of set you up. Somehow this was not on my radar. Talk to
Yeah.
me a little bit about that, because it sounds really interesting, but it also sounds very strange in that you didn't
Yes.
have a lot of interaction with the gang.
No, it was what was I think the show's name was Assembled.
Okay.
It was Assembled. I think it ended up showing for the first time in the Arts Memphis offices, I believe.
Okay.
And I think I have to find a flyer somewhere. It's definitely online. But it was me. I think Kenny Wayne was a part of it. It was like a modge podge of people that like I'll obviously know them all now, but back then I didn't really know because again I'm fresh out of school. So it's like I knew Lester. I met Vitus, I think through Lester, because we are the Whitehaven connection, and then Birdcap was there, and I don't think I met Birdcap then. Another artist, which I mean I don't know, man. Cedar Norby was a part of it. Very interesting fellow. He was a part of it, and I felt his presence because he would definitely come in and just paint over some of your shit, like just. Yeah, you would have a thing going.
Collaboration is such a tricky thing, and it's such a
Yeah.
hard thing. I mean, it really is. I mean, and it's also one of those things where when it goes really well, it's like, wow, collaboration is awesome. And when it doesn't go especially well, we're sort of left with that taste in our mouth where we're like, collaboration is not that great.
Yeah, it was weird.
But now I'm curious, when you were talking about working with this crew of people, I mean, it's now I'm just like, we just got to stop this interview, and I need to look these pictures up. But
Yeah.
now, when you're thinking about that, and you were talking about some things that you learned in terms of like, people would cover things up. I'm also really curious about, because was this the first time that you had done sort of a large scale collaboration?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
What were some things in terms of thinking about this project that left you with a good taste? What were some things that you think worked well for the project?
I think we were talking about the public art. I think bumping into the idea of public art and collaboration in that space. I think that was like the first little like of me flirting with it, because there was times where I was there with Vitus and we were making decisions together because we both had collage elements in our work. And so when I noticed that in his work and he noticed it in mine, we started like bouncing it off. And I think one of the main pieces that most people remember from the show is a piece where it's me and Vitus's work together. And he was doing kind of cutouts of like things he had painted at the time and like placed that on top of some collage work. And I was also kind of in there bullshitting because I was letting them know like, yo, I'm not like that kind of painter anymore. Like I don't just paint stuff. Like I need like references and all these things. And so I like came in with like hella books and hella books and like watercolors and gouache. And so like I started just creating bases on canvas and like glue and like Mod Podge and all this stuff. And I started just creating bases for things. And then when I came back, you would see like somebody like rolled something over it or like dragged paint across it. And like, it was like, oh, okay. And it's like, well, what can I do on top of this? And so for me, a lot of what I ended up doing was like creating the basis for a lot of the stuff, just through collage work, and like trying to communicate things in the collage and like what I was writing and tearing down and, watercoloring and stuff like that. I don't think any of them have my like direct painting on them. There was like much more experienced people in the building, and I was just like, Vitus, you got it. Birdcap, you got it. Like, just when I would come in, I would see these different things, and I would just be like, oh, okay. Like, and I didn't feel like I could add anything at that point, and I didn't want to like when you see like something Vitus did, it's like I don't want to mess that up, and so like I didn't really have the I don't know, like I didn't have the whatever to like feel like I could add anything to these folks' stuff.
Well, I mean, it's like anything else. I mean, the first time you play, doubles tennis, or I don't know, insert sports metaphor here, it's totally different. But then also collaborating is such an organic thing, and it's such every time you do it, it is radically different in terms of who you're doing it with. It also totally changes like how it's all. There's so many variables that it's really hard to have that be your first experience and have it be like it work well. But I know that you collaborated on projects otherwise that
Yeah.
seemed to work better. What do you think it was about those projects? And what were the projects that you did that were collaborations with other people that worked better?
I think as time went on in terms of like dealing with public art, as time goes on, like you kind of learn your strengths and your weaknesses. And like the first few public art commissions I did, I like painted and like I designed, painted, did the submissions and all these things or whatever, and it was like exhausting. And I think though the stuff was cool for the time that it existed in the context it existed in, it wasn't my strength to do that much of it. And so like, and I also like it very clear like, yo, I can paint. I don't consider myself like a painter, right? Like you talked about like developing your eye, developing your hand and these things. It's like because I never did that, so that translates to drawing, that translates to painting. So I just can't like grab a bunch of paint and like start painting something. I can, but it ain't finna be nothing special. I have to like ruminate. You know what I mean? Like I have to like research and do all these things and like pull from places. And for public art, there was like this nice marriage of like, oh, I don't have to like, especially the way that I thought about it, which I think is more normal now. But at that time, public art was very much like an artist in a studio trying to position something in nature, in business structure, in whatever it is. And it's just like, it doesn't necessarily have a direct communication with the neighborhood, the community, or whatever it is. And so for me, the way that I was thinking about public art at the time was like, hey, I'm putting this in whatever community. Hey, community, what do you want to see? Oh, you want to see this person and that person and this thing represented. Okay, I'm going to go find those things, put them together in a design, present that to you. Oh, you like that? And then I put it together. And I think that like allowed my imagination to take a break, right? And so that was a big thing. And then I could focus on the presentation of the thing. And like, even that I had to learn, like there was commissions I didn't get like back to back to back to back that I was like, yo, kind of like, yo, fuck this. This is stupid. And then like, I had like a uncomfortable, like a hard conversation with like a few artists about what I need to be doing and what it needs to look like for me to get these commissions. And I think that paired with again campaigning and building relationships and also withholding, like I'll be very like honest, where it was like I lost a few that I felt like I was gonna get. I was arrogant about it, but I also didn't like the process. I didn't like how much work I had to do on the front end to get no money, because I had to do the same amount of work in terms of like the design, in terms of the presentation, in terms of like going to fucking Michael's and everywhere else and like putting together this packet and this thing and making 5 or 6 of them to hand to people. And it's like, then you lose, you get nothing. Right. And so like, who pays me back for my materials? Who pays me back for whatever? And I'm broke. Right. So it's like every time I lost, it was like I maybe also lost $200 extra or whatever it is. And, you know, at that time, that was like a lot for me to lose when you don't have much. And so it was like, all right, you know, I don't like the process of this. I like the idea of doing it, but I don't like the process. And so I remember having very like specific conversations with people who were working at UAC at the time, like friends of mine. I was like, yo, I'm not doing this anymore. And they were like, no, you have to do it. You have to do it. It's like, yo, I'm not doing this. And like certain people, shout out to them, who like really like stayed on me about it. It was like, yo, this thing is coming up. District mural program is coming up. We developing this thing. It's our second year. Please apply. Please apply. Please apply. And like, I just like, all right, fuck it. And I applied and I got it. And so, but in between that, I was having conversations. Like I went and met with like Anthony Lee about some stuff, and he kept it really real with me. And again, it's like these people that you bump into that like are not afraid to keep it real with you. And like, you know, he was like, yo, I saw your packet or whatever, and he was like, go over there or whatever. He was like, go over there. It's like some dresser or something in his studio. He was like, get that out or whatever. And he showed me Kong Wee Pang's commission for the the overpass situation downtown. I lost that, and I lost that to her, and maybe many other people. I may have got kicked out early, but like, you know what I mean. But like, I wanted that really bad at the time, and then she got it, and her team got it, and I looked at that, and I saw what she had presented, and I was like, oh, okay, you know, it was like, oh, I'm not here, right? Like I'm not even thinking like this. And so it's like not even just creatively, but also like how to present this. And so I was like, yo, can I like take some pictures of this and like took pictures and like figured out my own version of how to present my work in that way, right? And then started to think about my ideas different. I think when I first started wanting to do public art, it was an extension of my practice. And so the ideas and the work and the things I was submitting was an extension of that, and not just being what I need to be for the wall, for the statue, for the whatever. And that's also kind of why I stopped doing public art too, is because there was no, the fulfillment for me was community based. And but artistically, it was just so different than my practice. You could see things in it that was that. And I think that's why, again, going back to the collaboration, it started to go, okay, there's a level of things that I can do. And I think with the district mural program, I did a mural on the back wall of not Germantown, Orange Mound Community Center. That whole back wall in the gymnasium, I did that design. I'm very proud of it, right? And like we executed it, me, Tunki, and Ahmad put it up. And Ahmad, that was the first time I worked with them to do the painting, right? Because I had ideas for how I wanted to be painted, but I knew my skill set. And so like they were able to kind of like work with me as an assistant and like get this thing together. And so the install was scariest shit in the world. It was it was horrifying being on ladders and things like that. It was just like terrible, like 20 feet in the air above like 10 more feet because you're above like a gym floor. And it was just like on stairs with like a paint bucket underneath. It was horrific. I thank Tunki for not dropping me. Because it was like, I can't get him to go up there. There's no insurance on him. So it was like, I had to do everything. And I was like, yeah, this is too much work for the money. Like, it was just like, it just started to become this thing where I was like, oh, I'm risking my life. Like, it's all kind of stuff going on. And I'm not really that person. I'm not Birdcap. And I remember like having a conversation with Ahmad and was like, no, like every time I saw Birdcap put up a mural, it's like, that's who should be doing this. I might just be like a businessman or something. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, I just might be good at presenting things, right? And being the painter and being the dude on the ladder and like on the lift and like all this stuff. Maybe it's something I don't want to do. And I can do it, but I don't enjoy doing it. And it took me maybe like 5 commissions to kind of like learn that. But those early commissions, going back to that, they didn't last the test of time because I didn't really know. I was learning in real time. And again, I was thinking about it as an extension of my practice. And I remember the breaking point was one, learning about Polytab, right? So the breaking point was learning about Polytab. But pre-learning about Polytab, because I learned about Polytab at the district mural program, right? So that means I went to Philly, like UAC took us to Philly, and I met with an artist who passed away a few years back, but he was a genius and just super talented. Just Polytab, a whole side of a building, like 40 stories or some shit. You know what I mean? And he taught me things, like how to use it and how to paint on all this stuff. And he taught the whole team that. And I was like, oh, this is dope. But pre that, I'm literally like drilling wood panels into a building that go up 20 feet out. Like, it was just like, and I remember like having to install a piece of work downtown, and it was like November. It was like 30 something degrees outside, and like being on a ladder and like putting the ladder on top of a car. It was just like ghetto. It was just so raggedy, and it was just like, yo, I can't keep doing this. And like me and my brother, we had to, and like this is a side of the story. Sorry, people listening. I'm sorry I'm ranting about this, but it was hell. It was not fun at the beginning. We pieced together, because although what Lowe's sells like 4 foot by 4 foot or 8 by 4s or whatever it is, right? So we have to find the right amount of that paneling to get a 20 by whatever, thing. There's no place to work on something like that. I don't have access to warehouses or anything. So we're in my backyard on the basketball court, sawing wood and putting this thing structurally together that is massive, that like requires 2-3 people to lift it up. And of course, because I can't just freehand draw the shit, I have to project onto it. And so I have to lift this thing up and tie it to the back of my house. And then set a projector up across my backyard on the fence to project on it, and I have to wait till nighttime to do this too, right? So now it's nighttime, mosquitoes, all this like, and I'm having to draw this thing that I'm like, oh, this is great design. I'll just, put the city of Memphis together and all of this stuff and whatever. And I have to draw this shit like very large in one kind of swing with this thing tied to my house by nails. And I have a picture of me doing it. It looks like the most ridiculous thing in the world. And then we collaged on top of it because I'm also an idiot. So we collaged on it and then pieced it together. And I remember like having to take it down, and we had all these pieces separate in the backyard. And then it started raining before we had sealed anything, before we and so like we're having to just like and like bring all of the different panels, which is like I don't know how many panels, like 5 or 6 of them, into the house. And I was like, yo, I got paid like $7,000 to go through this hell. And I was like, nah, dude, there has to be an easier way to do this. Why? What are other people doing, and how have I gotten myself into this mess? Like trying to like, again, expand my practice, but also like expand my pockets at the same time too. And it was just like, yeah, there has to be an easier way. And then I found Polytab. And
this episode sponsored by Polytab.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, one of the things I love about all of that, I mean, it was so good. As I was listening to you, I was like, okay, so ask about like who it was that cracked it open and how they crack it open. But you just got to all of that stuff. I love that. I mean, that thing about Anthony showing you that presentation, I mean, to me, that is such a key thing in terms of thinking about how people can be generous and how their generosity can really be helpful. And you've talked about that a bunch in a lot of different ways. To me, that's such a good thing to hear again. But then also this thing about saying, here, take a look at this. And this is something that when urban art comes to U of M, we will always sort of say, okay, can you show us what a good presentation looks like? And because it's radically different than anything that we do in our classroom. It's radically different than anything that happens in the gallery system. It's totally different from all these other things. It is kind of its own little sphere. And I love how you were talking about the Urban Art Commission. I mean, to me, one of the things that I like about being here now is that I remember specifically what it was like when Urban Art Commission began, and how they really had trouble finding anyone who could do projects, who were qualified to do projects in town, because it is such a crazy learning curve.
Yes, it's very hard.
And I mean, to me, in terms of thinking about what they have done to dig themselves out of that hole, or to make the situation so much better for artists in town, and this thing that you were talking about, going to Philly and meeting all these people and finding about the Polytab, all of these things are just like radical game changers. And to me, so important about thinking about what Memphis was like maybe in the early aughts, and what Memphis, and especially these institutions, are like now. Now, when you were talking about that Orange Mound mural, I remember when you were working on that. I remember it was really interesting to see you work on it. I mean, I know you were we don't know about the thunderstorm and tying things to the building, on Facebook, which is kind of how I knew about this project. But I remember that was sort of a place where it seemed like there was a really great energy within you and Ahmad and Tunki working on this project. And there was, to me as an outsider, the project looked really fantastic, but then it also was really interesting in terms of seeing you doing these things that were also tied to community, which I know is something that we've talked about a billion times in the last 4 or 5 hours. But talk a little bit more about that process that you were talking about with Orange Mound, and talking to the people in the community about what they needed, because that, to me, that feels like sort of early seeds of some of the things that you guys did over there on Lamar.
Yeah, I think, like even stuff like that goes even further back to me, because the mural that I did over Soulsville was that, like it was like me working with a youth organization, like a community youth organization, to like decide who was going to be on the mural and what it was going to look like and all this stuff. And that made it a lot easier for me because it's like, you know, my practice was what my practice was. But if like people are throwing in ideas and say, hey, we need to see this church, we need to see this thing, it's like I can take all those things and like put it within the context of what I know how to do and then present that to somebody. And like I don't, this person doesn't need to mean anything to me. It's not mine, right? It's the community's. And I think it made it a nice little balance between like working on music that was like so internally me, and then like my studio practice, which was like so externally kind of like the South in a way and like America. And then like working on public art, which was just these people in this neighborhood, right? And like what they wanted and what they want to see. And so I'll go even a little further back. I think so. There's a few things because you hinted at like some of it, like the early kind of like times of UAC, right? And UAC kept getting in trouble. They kept getting in trouble. And I was around for them getting in trouble. And I had feelings and critiques as well. And I think that Soulsville mural came from me being frustrated with UAC, early UAC, which when it transferred over. So like Lauren's early years there, like where she just kind of got handed a thing that had been functioning the way it had been functioning. And then again, like everything is what it is, right? So it's like the purpose that it served in those early years was something different than the potential of what it could be, right? And the way that it was thought about, and then the way that the city was changing. And so, you know, when you talk about like artists not having the skill set or the knowledge or whatever to do these things, like all this stuff is factually true. And then it's also like where those pieces were being placed was also very different, right? And so, and this goes into the things, and like I'm trying not to like be too heavy-handed with it, but a lot of times art can be or is a vehicle for gentrification and development, right? Pre that being a thing.
P.S. You don't have to be judicious about it.
Yeah.
The arts is the method of gentrification. I mean, in terms of like, you know, a neighborhood is going to go to hell, or rather it's going to suddenly become like, what did Peony described it to me the other day? He was like, oh yeah, the other day I was walking out to my car and there was a lady in yoga pants with a huge Starbucks drink pushing like a $300 baby stroller down the street. And it was like, that is the great, you know, like four horsemen of the apocalypse, but in the form of gentrification. Yeah. And I mean, artists really have always been that. Not that they are sitting around and they're like, let's gentrify this neighborhood, but we do a thing.
We get used for it.
And then all of a sudden, real estate people swarm in, or the people who own this building suddenly realize, oh, look, there's an artist down the street and it's going to be an arts district. And so now let's increase the rent 300%. Yeah. Okay. So anyway.
No.
So that way you don't have to say it can be. Yeah. It is for sure. Yeah.
And so I'm learning this in real time at that period of time. I didn't know it yet. So I had at that point been like the face of a few different developments on accident, right? Because I didn't really know. And even like the things that happened later, it's like I didn't know. And like sometimes people maybe certain people from quote unquote the community feel like I don't know, right? Like, or feel like I did know, right? I know now, but I didn't know then. I just was an artist trying to like succeed. You know what I mean? And so it's like you go into a place and you go, oh, there's opportunities for me here. Okay, I'm here, right? And I want it to be great. I want it to be whatever. So I'm placing myself in context of things that I believe are going to make me great, or people are telling me will make me great, right? And again, I'm very much, as you will see from all the stories that we're talking about, I'm a person who like bumps my head. Like I'm like, oh, because again, I'm not coming from generations of like people who were in the arts and like all this stuff. Like they were, but just very like in their house with it, right? There was no art world knowledge in my home. There was no music industry knowledge in my home or film industry knowledge in my home. The appreciation for the thing might have been there, but not the knowledge behind the curtain. And so now that I'm on this other side of this thing and I'm actively doing it, you're bumping into the stuff. And so with the early days from UAC, it's like the commissions that were going out to be in businesses and like, you know, hotels and all of these different things. And then as what we now know is all of the development that we like are currently existing within started to like the button was pushed for it to start, right? Things start to shift. And so I remember UAC was getting a lot of heat for out of town people getting commissions. And specifically when they did get in town people, they weren't black or brown people, based on the demographics of the city, based on what that ratio is. And people felt like, hey, if there's 10 commissions, then in theory 6 of them need to be people of color, right? If there's 60%, right?
Especially if the projects are going to be going into neighborhoods of color.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I remember that experience. I remember that it was in early kind of in the time when there was some heat.
Yeah.
And I remember the meeting was at the Civil Rights Museum.
Yeah.
I remember being at that one. I think it was shortly after I moved back to Memphis from Iowa. So it must have been like early aughts. And I remember Carissa was there.
Yeah.
And I remember it was a very interesting experience because in the same way that you were talking about community, it was a very, and then the way of our presentations being different from art school. That meeting, I think, was particularly impactful with Carissa and with the UAC. I mean, hopefully I'll be able to get her in here at some point to talk about it. But I remember that being a real shift. That was a real change. And then, like, at that point, Carissa stayed. She stayed for many years after that. And if I remember right, there were a lot of those big shifts, like in terms of thinking about the Philadelphia trips and bringing other artists in town and how important that was. And I remember when I was talking to Birdcap the other day, one of the things we talked about was when Zimmerman came to town to do that big mural next to the Redbird Stadium, how him coming to town, hiring Anthony Lee, hiring a bunch of other people to help with that was also kind of like this big shift. And so I know for sure one of the things, again, that I love about seeing it is seeing these organizations have these realizations and then make great efforts to change. Like in the same way that you were talking about Lester as a kind of agitator within the Arts Memphis. I mean, Lester, I think, if I remember right, talked about that when we did the interview. And I think it's, the squeaky wheel, and I think it's the need for artists who are visible and respected and aware to say, hey, this is a thing that we need to fix. Yeah. And I think, to me, Arts Memphis and the Brooks the Dixon and all these other organizations, I think, have really listened. And UAC, especially thinking about, it seems like every week there's a new symposium or seminar on how to put together a packet or how to use Polytap, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, I think, like, not to be, I'm good. I'm pro a good boycott. And I think, like, when you talk about, like, these shifts happening, I think behind the scenes what was happening was we were getting together and going, we're not going to apply for nothing. And so that's so, like, there's always, like, there's two sides to these things, right? So, like, there's a very forward-facing, like, PR version of, like, whatever institution is like, hey, now we've changed whatever they changed is because we were in their ass in private. And so, for me, I was very clear when I was talking about the person who was, like, begging me to kind of apply. Like, there was a friend of mine, but they wanted me to apply because me not applying and then telling people I'm not applying and telling people I'm boycotting. Like, I literally had an open boycott of UAC for about however many months because I was frustrated with the process, right? And that process changed after that, right? And so when you have prominent artists, and I believe this wholeheartedly, I don't care when people listen to this, they can think I'm as arrogant as whatever. Artists make the shit, right? Artists do the thing. Without us, there is none of this shit, right? Like the room that we're sitting in, any of this stuff, like there's no version of that. If artists hate all of this shit, right, and don't want to show up, or they feel like they're not respected here or not platformed here, and we don't show up, then the shit's not cool, right? And like when you learn, like for me, I was in the thick of like all the development stuff and like being somewhere and like hanging out with my friends and like doing shows and performing and like having DJ sets and all these different things. And then all of a sudden, developer X comes in or owner X comes in and goes, oh, let me now turn this into something and make sure that it's a place that one, y'all can't afford, that you can't come back to, that you don't feel welcome to come back to, and we're just gonna like capitalize off that energy to make money and then spread this out. And so like I've been everywhere, like every gentrified land in the last however many years, I was somewhere in the mix of that. So I know this very personally, like whether it be like South Main, whether it be Binghamton, whether it be Orange Mound, whether it be this area, whether it be whatever, you know what I mean, in terms of development, downtown Memphis, the Edge District. Like I was running around there when all that shit was warehouses, right? And half of it still is, right? But like we were all at martial arts. We remember that. We remember what everything looked like around it. We remember the Dizzy Bird. We remember all these things and like programming there and like doing shows there and performing there and then being kicked out of there, right? So like all these different things because of things that went on and didn't have nothing to do with me, right? But that's what was going on. It was really a wild, wild west in terms of DIY spots. And so again, like what you said, it's like this warehouse, this whatever, we occupy space here, we program things here, we have parties here, we have DJs, we perform, we do all these things here, we make this shit cool, and then we get booted at a certain point, right? Because it changes into something different, and people can now invest in it because they now see that people will come to this little poo-put area of town and actually spend their money, right? And so now they go, I can put something here, right? But before that, nobody was there, right? And so it's like I've been in maybe, I don't know how many, every version of that. I've been you can name any development in the last 10 years, 15 years, like I've been around, right? From 17 to, 30 years old when I stopped kind of running around. And so for me, the back end of everything that you're saying is us pressing them, is us having conversation, is us cussing people out, like is the stuff that like gets us blackballed, right? Like I've been blackballed a few times, right? Like I know that. And it don't last too long, right? Because like at the end of the day, like art is art, right? And people need it. And if you're great, you can create your way through a blackball or people not liking you or people thinking you're arrogant or a troublemaker or whatever it is. And if you stand in that, like I've had conversations with people, about things that I've said in panels and all these other stuff or whatever, where I've been very harsh in critiquing various different institutions. And like, yeah, that's what was necessary. Like that's what was necessary. I maybe don't feel that way anymore, or maybe wouldn't handle things that way, right? Like I wouldn't go to somebody's like institution and sit on their panel and kick their back in today. I would maybe do that, right? But me doing that at 24, 25, 26, along with other people who were doing that at various different levels, it made the voices loud enough to where somebody had to change. And then you think about like the cultural thing that was happening around the time. So like you get this Me Too movement, you get George Floyd, you get like Black Lives Matter, you get like all of these different things that kind of happened that were happening when I was in college. Like Trayvon Martin got killed with 2012, right? And I was going to class painting paintings about like police brutality and violence, and people were like, yo, that shit don't happen. That's not real, right? Like white people in my classes were telling me that I'm tripping, that I'm over exaggerating and like attacking my work via critique in the socio-economical kind of ways that I'm thinking about this work when I'm living as a black person in this country. It's just not mainstream yet. Like the phones hadn't got there yet to where now we see 4K video of people getting bullets shot into them from police officers or getting foots on their neck and all these types of things, whether they did something for the interaction to start or not. People didn't see that at mass. So everything that I felt like I was discussing in my own personal work and then all my friends and all the people that I was around at the time, it felt like paranoia to everybody else. And so when we would come into institutions and we would go, hey, this ain't this is that, they felt like we were just tripping, right? And so as time started to go on, you go from 2012 to 2018, right? It starts to shift. Trump wins, you know what I mean? Like these different things. So things start to shift. And so this idea, I think a lot of times, a lot of institutions and a lot of quote unquote liberal white people rested their laurels on the fact that Obama was a president. And so that meant that like things were okay. And it was like, yo, that don't mean shit, like really, right? Like actually, like it's just representation, and we know now that representation does not actually mean change. It just means that like one of you did what you needed to do enough to be in this space, right? To be a president, to be on the board of this or that. It doesn't mean that you're even connected to us culturally or our interests or our desires, right? It doesn't mean that at all. It just means that you got there. And it doesn't mean anything for me. It can though, but most of the time it doesn't. And I think that's what liberals don't always understand, is that representation is great, but representation with the desire to help, the desire to do for community, and not just not to have a seat at the table. Like that's the whole thing. It's like so many people just like, I want a seat at the table so I can affect change. It's like once you get that seat, you realize that you can't, because that's how you got the seat. And the fact that you even got the seat means that you maybe won't affect that change, right? Because if you were Fred Hampton, they would just shoot you in your sleep like they did Fred Hampton, right? So you're actually not that. You're actually not this revolutionary that you think that you are by becoming whatever, the president of this or the whoever over this thing. You probably aren't doing that revolutionary work in theory, right? You can though, right? But it takes a little trickery to do so. And so I think with us being on the ground and really not having anything to lose, right? So I'm working in the community. I'm doing the arts thing in the community. I'm like kind of have broken away from the quote unquote gallery system of things, and like everything that I'm doing and all the ways that I'm making money and creating opportunity for myself are just based in myself. So it allows for me to then speak more freely because I'm not having to play the same games. And so again, you can walk into institution A and go, hey, I think this needs to change, or I think some things need to change, or who can I talk to about a thing? And like you have to like weigh this balance of like how much do you do that and how much do you not, and how many people are with you doing that. And I think I say all this to say it's like we were doing that to UAC, right? Like and it wasn't just us, right? So it was like it was me and my homies and the people who were black who wanted a shot. Like, hey, how do I learn how to do this if I never get an opportunity to do this, right? And so that is where I kind of, because I had gotten another grant through some stuff that like Linda Steele was doing, like Art Up or something like that. And that was connected to the art spaces, which was, again, another development, right? So everything is kind of that in the arts. That's the only way you get the funding, right? That's how that works. And so I was there doing that thing, and I was building my own commission, not because I wanted to run a commission or do murals all the time. Is I wanted to create something to where I could do them the way that I felt like they needed to be done, which is essentially like how they're done now, right, at UAC. It was different before. It was much different before. And so it's like, you know, when I'm in pitch rallies and people from UAC are in the rallies, and I have UAC and other institutions listed as examples of not what I want to do, that's bad, right? Like in terms of like if you are an institution whose mission or goal is to provide art for communities in the city of Memphis, and then there's like this young up and coming artist. I'm not taking credit for all these things. It was a synergy of things, right? Like it was me, it's the paper, it's the I Am a Man situation with that Claiborne Temple, and like who got that commission. It's like there was a lot of bad press to the point where it's like, yo, they have to bring in racial sensitivity people and like do this whole shebang where they just reset everything. And I was in some of those meetings, and I was in some of those things being recorded, talking about my feelings and my experiences there. And it wasn't all negative. It was just like, these are ways that these things can match up. Like when we talk about the ratio, it's like 60 some percent, 62, 63% black folks here. All right. And if you have 100 commissions, then 60 of them maybe need to go to, just theoretically, right? For 60 commissions need to go to people who are ready. And if they aren't ready, we need to create programming to get them ready. And that was the whole thing that we were saying. So, however many months after those facts, that time period, things get rolled out differently, right? So the way that commissions are, and then again, you get paid for even applying, right? So like you apply and you create a design, you lose, you still get some money back for your time. And a part of that larger commission is it bites off a piece for that. And that's what we were asking for. That was stuff we was asking for back in the day. It's like, yo, if I spent $200 on this and I got nothing and I just lost, and I've been in this process for 2 months, like that's bad. So it's like we started to again knock at that door, and I've people know me, right? Like I ain't gotta lie, or I ain't even gotta like say names. Like people know the places in which I've made my presence known in that way and boycotted or just said that I wasn't going to come back to a place or whatever it is and then just was absent, right? If I'm a staple in the arts community here and you're a staple and you're a staple and you're a staple and we just all decide that, hey, we don't come to any more of these exhibitions because we don't like certain things that are happening, then that's a loss for the community. And it just depends. Like maybe there are people who aren't as talented that feel like they do that too, and then they don't, right? But I do think when you're that for real, it's an impact. There's an impact when you're there or when you're not there. And artists, I always am preaching for them to leverage that because the institution is not going to inherently think about you. Like they have other things on their plate. And it's like, again, as a person who's worked within institutions later, I learned what that is and what that balance is. And it's a really tricky balance to make sure that you're fulfilling the work of the community, right? Or the work that the community wants you to fulfill and being there for them, but also your shareholders and all these other people who are really not concerned with that. They're concerned with the functionality of this thing. Like I've seen people get money for programming and 2 people be there, but they document it and then send it in and they get more grant money. It's like, you're not doing the work for real, right? Like you're not doing, like you're just doing the program. And that's really all that they care about at a certain level because it's just big money shit. Like that's the only way I know how to describe it. It's like, it's just big money stuff because it's not even connected to whether this exhibition sells work to an art. That's like, to them, that's like very low hanging fruit if they're selling the art, right? It's about, is this thing garner like pulling in the people that I needed to pull in so I can then put this next to it and that next to it and that next to it and make money for the money that I'd invested into buying this property 25 years ago, 30 years ago. It's just been sitting here and falling apart. Like, again, like I've seen all the stages of it, like having to like get a space and just seeing like how dilapidated it was and like being like, yo, somebody owns this and they just let this fall apart in a community where people live. They didn't even want to maintain it, come in every 6 months or whatever it is and make sure that there's no leaks or whatever it is. They don't give a damn, right? But then they give a damn when you come there and you start having shows and thousands of people start pulling up, right? Now they want to do something with it. And so that is a long answer, but it's also like why I got the fuck out of a lot of this shit. You know what I mean? And like, I just make my art and I show my art where I show my art. I'm not necessarily in a space right now today trying to combat anybody anymore. I just don't want to anymore. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Well, I mean, to me, that's such a good place in terms of so often we as makers and activists and people who are passionate about a particular thing, we will get burned out. You know, I mean, that's part of, or the pendulum will swing and, you know, our brains are like, you know, you really need to spend more time making music or you really need to make more time for your family or whatever. And so to me, that's a really tricky thing and a really difficult thing because one of the things that I say, you know, is that you don't have to kill yourself to make a huge difference in Memphis. But then also you also, when you are the only person involved in a particular endeavor, you know, whether it's an alternative space or whether it's, you know, whatever, then sometimes when you stop, there's a huge loss and a difficulty. But now I'm interested. I mean, it sounds like this is sort of like a logical segue in terms of thinking about some of your other activism. You were talking about Linda Steele, and I know that the work that she did, or in my mind, again, this might be wrong, and hopefully you can clarify it. To me, in my mind, the Orange Mound Gallery was sort of this beginning point for a lot of the things that you guys were doing as the Complex and then later as Tone. Will you talk to me a little bit about Linda Steele? And she's also one of those people that I'm like, I really need to get Linda Steele in here. Will you talk to me a little bit about her?
She's hard to pin down. I know that much. I haven't talked to her in a few years, I think. I don't know what Linda Steele is doing. I can't even remember when I met Linda Steele. I'm sure I met her at like an exhibition or something like that. But it's like one of those things where it's like it was the early days, and there's not that many black women around in those spaces, so you kind of like get to know the ones you get to know, like Gretchen. Like you can just say their names and people know them, right? Because they just occupy the space they occupy. And so Linda Steele was that, and she was working with whoever she was working with on this like art up thing, and it was essentially like a business incubator to help artists transfer their creative thinking into like business essentially. And so I am a very business minded person, and a lot of maybe the ways that we talk about art, like through these episodes, like there's a little bit of art talk, but it is also like it's the ambition, it's all these other things too, that's a big part of it. And that's why I was like, talking about being a businessman, you know what I mean, or whatever. And so it's like I took an interest in that, and I had proposed again at that time an idea for a public art commission, because I truly believe this thing about competition. I am not capitalist. I hate capitalism. I hate it so much. I believe in competition though. And I know that sometimes those things are like inherently connected. But I do think when an institution or entity or business is not challenged, it will not produce innovation, right? And so if we're going all the way back to what we were talking about with the UAC, at that time in my frustrations with not getting any commissions, right? And then it not even being about me, like me seeing people who were more talented and more whatever and more accomplished having some of the similar things and being frustrated by certain things. It was like, all right, like if I can't learn how to do this in the space, if I can't be given a shot because I don't have the resume, but I want to do this. And that's the thing too. It's like all of this always comes from us just wanting to participate, right? Like so much of this is just, hey, let me participate. Let me enjoy this platform as well. And when you get no'd a bunch of times, like had that with like the Levitt Shell, now the Overton Park Shell at a point. There was a point where it was like, yo, I want to be here. I respect this stage. I want to be here. Figure out, like, can we figure out how to make that happen? And you get enough no's, then it turns into, okay, it must be some other thing, right? And it becomes a beef. And then you resolve that however you resolve it, right? And which I did, right? So same thing with like UAC. It was like this thing where it's like, all right, me and enough people that I know are not getting a shot, and we don't know how to learn. Like there's nowhere for us to learn how to do this. It's a weird kind of black magic. You know what I mean? Like, again, learning what Polytab is, all this stuff, and like how to use it and all this other stuff. It's like you didn't even know what to Google. Like, you know what I mean? You didn't even know. Like, you just see murals on top of things. You just think that somebody just did that, right? And so for me, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna talk to the people at Community Lift. I went over there talking to the folks over there through being introduced to them through Linda Steele and through her kind of incubator program that took us to New York and took us to New York. And yeah, I think we went to New York, and we got to see a bunch of small black businesses operating in New York. There were like very just different ones. Like some were like kitchens and like art things and like community based things, like all this stuff. And like I just was like taking notes and just being like, oh, like people in Brooklyn are doing this, people in wherever doing this. And I think that was my second time ever going to New York. The first time was like vacation with a girl I was dating, and like the second time it was like that. It was like me just like being on the ground learning from people who were like, yo, I went to jail for this, I got out, I felt like people needed healthier food, and I know that felons have a hard time, getting jobs or whatever. I created this kitchen thing that hires people who are exclusively felons to cook this food, and they all like, we're figuring out how to like get their records clean and then like get them into culinary schools. Like all this just creative thinking in the business context, but also in the community context. And so it was like, I'm having that experience, and then I'm coming back and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to use this experience to create a public art commission that makes work purely based in what the community wants, nothing else, right? And we'll pair the community with artists who then go out and again do these workshops and do these things and learn and whatever, work with young people. And then also a big portion of that money then goes to the people who participated in working on that stuff. And so like, and then if there's like, for me, what I did was I went with Community Lift. Community Lift gave me like $10,000 to do something in Soulsville off of just the connection and me pitching this thing and this idea to them. And they gave me some money. I like had learned about Polytab at that time or whatever. So, but not well. But I learned about it decently enough to like get started on my own. So I like bought a roll of Polytab, and then I like primed it, and then like just had learned enough. And I think this was pre district mural program. So this like it was like right before it. But I had learned about Polytab, I think through somebody, maybe I can't even remember. Somebody taught me about it, but I didn't know how to use it properly. That was the whole thing. But I knew how to get started at least. And so I went, I got with this community center. Ooh, Gaston, somewhere off like in between like South Memphis and like if you take what becomes Elvis Presley, like if you take Elvis Presley all the way down, you just keep going, it turns into this other street, or like Third or something. I think it's Third. If you take Third all the way down, you kind of go through like these different areas. You pass like Crystal Palace and all that stuff. But there's a community center over there, and so I would go to the community center and like workshop with the young people at the community center for what they want to see, and the people in the neighborhood, and then some of the older folks. I would meet with them, and basically we would sit down and like kind of like create the design. And then I ended up like blowing that up and like, learning how to make a design in Photoshop, which I didn't know how to do at the time, but like just learning how to do it and like being able to present it. And it was very reminiscent. It's still there, but it's not as in good shape as it needs to be. But and that's a whole nother thing. But I got this thing, presented it, got the money, went me and my brother and like worked with the young people, had the young people like do the goop that goes on the back of the Polytab. So like creating a role for them, because my whole thing was like, I know what the arts has been for me in my life, even if it's just a conduit to another thing that I might find passion in or find love in. And so like, how do I expose more young people to that? How to expose more Black kids to that, right? And so like, it's like, hey, come work on this thing. Y'all may not paint on it, right? Which I think I did have them do some painting on them, just specific spots or whatever. And so like you give, you know what I mean? You gotta be careful. So it's like, it's like a commission
This
deal.
is like the Lawrence's trauma from the collaboration gone wrong. Yeah. It's like, all right, kid, you can do this, but that's my spot. Okay.
Like here's this face that's a little smaller. Right. Y'all take this square. So like they painted on that. I gave like a few different ones and I painted the rest. And then we, rolled it up, took it down there. And, put everybody in gloves. And we put the goop on the things, and we put the goop on the wall after me and my brother were out there priming. I almost had a heat stroke out there. That was another thing, because there was no shade. It was direct sunlight for 2 days, and I almost had a heat stroke. It was horrible. I was like sitting in 4-way grill, just getting like ice water back to back to back, so I wouldn't die. And but yeah, we did that, put it up, posted about it, and I announced the name of what the commission was, which I think it was called A Village Apart. And that was me kind of being like, yo, it was very like Death Row, very Suge Knight, which that's me. It is very much like, yo, if you tired of, these other commissions, dancing in the videos, doing whatever, come on over to us. And I kind of put that online, and it got a lot of attention. And then right after that, I got the district mural program, and then I dropped it. That's the thing, right? Maybe I shouldn't have, right? But my thinking was always upward mobility. And so I knew that by being a part of the district mural program, I was going to get knowledge that I didn't have to do this. And I did this very DIY, very like just out the trunk, right? And now I'm getting professional knowledge to do this thing and 3 times the money to do this in Orange Mound, right? And so for me, that was kind of the thing. And like you talked about like Linda Steele and stuff like that, that's kind of, it's all these different like webs of people who like are put together in a way that just makes the things what they are. And so like, yeah, Linda Steele basically, because when I got into that thing, like the little incubator, I kept telling, I was like, yeah, I don't know what to do. I'm an artist. I don't know what my business should be. I do not know what my business. And she was like, just keep working on the things that'll be revealed to you. And so maybe through that process, I lost like 2 commissions. And I was like, And I was like, well, can I do this? And so though it was like a LLC kind of thing, it was like, still a thing that could be within the context of what the opportunity or the grant was or whatever it was. And yeah, like that's how that kind of manifested, which again trickled to the thing, which trickled to the UAC thing, and then me working with them, and then like that kind of continuing. So it's like there's these people again, like Linda Steele, long answer again, but like Linda Steele's like one of those people, though I haven't talked to her in a long time, like yeah, like just her, and I don't know too much ins and outs about what Linda Steele's up to, what she's doing, but I do know that like in that moment she was very helpful for me in that space, and like made me feel like, hey, I could maybe take this, I could do anything. Like again, going back to things like I could do it. If it's not there, I can create it, even if it's not for me. And so, you know, however much time from now, somebody might be again like, hey, I don't feel like there's enough competition outside. I want something different out of these experiences, or I would like to create public art in communities that are not connected to any development at all, which was my whole thing. It was like talking about like Hickory Hill, like the mission of what a Village Apart was to only do commissions in like Black communities, period. Just like in all of them, like Hickory Hill has no art, right? They just got some stuff over there through UAC, which was much later, right? And then somebody did a commission that me and Amar was supposed to do on this church over there, but then COVID happened and it just all fell apart. But somebody eventually put some art on that church. There's no art over there. There's no art galleries. There's no sculptures. There's no, like, there's the fucking horrible, what's that? What's the Statue of Liberty with the Bible? There's that, right? That's the only art, quote unquote, that folks over there get to see. And so it's like, when we're talking about art being transformative to communities, right? How do we give them more of that? And that's what my kind of plan was initially. And maybe it's something I'll do later, right? Like I hopefully I have a long life. I can just put some money into some shit, let some other people do it. I don't need to be on the ladder, right? But again, it's like the seeds of all of who I am feel like they come out of these like moments of necessity, where it's like, yo, I want a commission, I can't get a commission. While I'm learning to get said commission, maybe I set up the infrastructure to like get other people commissions that I feel like might be capable. It never was about me. Like I just was the first one, right? And so it's just like the people who gave me the money trusted me the most because I presented it to them. But my plan was always to be like, hey, Tunki, hey, such and such, hey, such and such, y'all do these. And I help you get the money, pay you, and I just sit somewhere, right? And so, you know, these things may come back around 10, 15, 20 years from now. But I was trying to do that early, you know, with just the little energy that I had at the time and like the arrogance and like the gumption to kind of be like, I'm 24, I'm gonna fucking start a urban art commission. You know what I mean? Like start my own art commission because I want certain people to get commissions and they're not getting them. And so obviously the model at UAC changed. So like the need is maybe not the same, right? But I do think there's still a need for art to be placed in places that are not directly connected with any city investment or anything like that, because that's just how it all works, right? Like if the city of Memphis or the state of Tennessee looks at the city of Memphis and it feels like something's viable, then they dump art or they dump money into certain spaces, and that money trickles down, like talk about percent for art program and like these things. It's like that trickles down into the form of somebody in some community getting a mural or a statue or a bus stop or whatever it is. And it's like, it shouldn't be just connected to that, right? And like fast forwarding super crazy or like changing subject super crazy, but it's like watching what Derek Fajor is doing, right? It's like that is the thing. And like, and I, oh God, I'm all over the place, but like that is the resolution to me of these problems that we speak about. When I say like, hey, I'm not really in the space of like talking about any institutions online or going on panels and talking shit or like beefing with folks or whatever it is. I'm not asking any institution to do any of that shit, right? Like whatever I see, like do what y'all do, right? Like if it's a museum, be a museum. If it's a this, be that. If it's a gallery, be that. If it's a music venue, be that. I don't need you to be, I said this the other day and I'm going to say it on here, it's probably going to sound crazy. It's like, I don't need these motherfuckers to be Martin Luther King. I don't need them to do that. I need them to platform artists. That's what I need them to do. Specifically artists from here, right? That's my own, if you're doing that, whatever, dude. But like any of that other stuff, any of like the activism and the advocacy and all this other stuff, we can do that shit. So Derek, being who Derek is, gets to a space in his career where he's able to do some of these things, then doubles back and goes, hey, I want to put this in this city. and I want to affect the lives of artists and young people like this. That's the answer. It's not somebody's programming at some institution, right? That thing that he set up may become institution one day, but it is started, and like the brainchild of it is from an artist. And so if more artists, specifically in this city, more artists of color find themselves in a space where they're financially and visibility like wise able to affect that level of change, if there's 10 Derricks, what happens? If there's 100 Derricks, what happens? And that has been maybe my mission over the last 2 years, is like, I'm not going to be able to affect the type of change I want to affect through an exhibition, through a song, through working in a nonprofit, or programming something in an art gallery or a museum. What it is I need to go off and become the artist that I need to be at the level that I need to be able to control and make change the way that I want to change it, right? And it's not to say that change is in competition or conflict with anybody either. That's the thing too. I think when we talk about like early complex or collective things, which is a whole nother thing, and I speak very lightly about that stuff, but like it was created in conflict with the environment and maintained that conflict with environment probably until I left, right? And it was based in, there are things that we see happening that we don't like, and we're going to combat that with what we do, instead of being like, hey, there's a need and let's fulfill that need. It's very different, right? Like, to me, it's very different, because the conflict is with these other institutions and what they aren't doing or what they are doing and how we don't like it and how we want to represent something different from that. That's like centering whiteness, right? So like Toni Morrison, I think it was Toni Morrison, has this like quote about like centering whiteness in her work. And she's like, I don't need there to be a white antagonist or whatever it is for my work to matter in this space. It can just exist, right? And so the way that I think about things now is like, if I just see a need or see something I want to put into the world, I figure out how to do that. It doesn't need to be in conflict with an institution or a gallery or a white framework or whatever it is, or a racist framework or whatever you want to call it, or misogynist, racist, whatever. I don't care what they're doing. It doesn't matter to me. What am I doing? And I think when I look at like Cam and I look at things like that I've seen elsewhere, it's not about any of this other stuff. It's just about fulfilling a need. Like, for a group of people, they may not even understand that they're in conflict with anything. Like the young people who are at a CAM workshop or going to the summer camp, they may not even understand yet the social things that are hovering over their head in the world they live in. They may know a little bit of it, but they don't know how that's going to affect them, and they won't, because they have that thing. So when you get put into a program like that as a young person, and you're like able to learn and able, like, because I'm a product of a more drawn out version of that, right? When we talk about Linda Steele and Chuck and Beth and Jed and you and all of these different people, Coriana and all these different people who have popped up in my life, what if that was like structured and smushed down into a summer camp or whatever it is, right? So you having access to that level of knowledge, that level of insight, and that level of talent as a young person. When you come out of that, you're like, I can do anything. It's not even a matter of like, oh, I got to deal with all of this stuff and I got to fight all of these things. Like, I came out feeling like I needed to fight. And so that was my energy for the first however many years. It's like, look at the language I was using, boycott, this, that, and it's like, I'm in a fight. And I'm not saying that it's not a fight, but I do think it's one of those things like, don't fight angry or don't hoop angry. It's like a very interesting thing. Like, you fight different, you hoop different. And I had to learn that as a kid who had an anger problem. It's like, you're just running into something and you're not thinking. And so like now I'm not angry about anything. I'm not angry about what I see or what's happening. It doesn't involve me. It has nothing to do with me. And it's a weird place to be in, but it's nothing to do with me. What am I going to do? What am I doing? And so I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on Facebook or Instagram or any of these places anymore complaining about anything or attacking institutions or going into meetings and talking about all my beefs and all my qualms. Like, I don't need y'all to do nothing for me. I can do it myself. and I can do it for the other people who need these things. And so I just have to position myself and get where I need to be to do that, right? Like knowing Derek and getting mentorship from Derek and like talking to him about these things. One of the main things he would tell me, which I don't know if I should be saying this, but he was like, stop spending so much time trying to fight everything. He's like, you need to focus on your work. Your work is where the work is going to take you where you need to go. You don't have to be the savior of all these various different things. And by not thinking of yourself that way, you might fuck around and be that. You see what I mean? And so like, that's kind of where I am now within these things. And like, I have a different type of calm about me now. And like, I'm starting to have conversations with institutions and things that I maybe haven't been having conversations with for a while, because I don't need them to be my savior. I'm not looking for them to do these things for me or my community, or quote unquote my community. I can do them, right? And then also me and every other artist who is like-minded can do them, right? So again, when we talk about there being one Derek, what happens when there's 10? What happens when there's 100? What happens when there's 1,000? Because just Derek doing the cam thing means 10 years from now, there might be 5 of him, right? So what if we were all doing that, right? Like all of us were just committed to that in our own little way, in our own little pocket, and like doing whatever little thing on the ground that affects that level of change 10 years from now, 15 years from now. Like just in my time leaving the U of M, I remember being like very much like the only black kid in my graduating class, right? And then I remember going back, you know, for some show or whatever when I was like, you know, whatever, it was like hella black kids walking around. I was like, oh shit. You know what I mean? So it's like, if that's what it's about, it's happening, right? And it's happening because we're doing the work that we're doing, and they're seeing us in the content. They're seeing us in the Brooks. They're seeing us in Crosstown. They're seeing us on all these different places, and they're aspiring as well, just like I saw Lester, just like I saw Vitus, just like I saw Coriana and anybody, Chuck and anybody else, and heard their stories. It's like, oh, I know I can occupy space here because I see it happening. And it's not something I have to like, I don't know, like I don't need to rebel as much, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, for me, one of the things I love about all of that stuff that you're talking about is the impulse for a recognition that there is something that needs to be changed, or there's a recognition that here is a way that I can affect that change and still stay, sane, and I'm able to not totally burn myself out. And in the same way that you were talking about that experience with Anthony and him showing you Kong Wee's project, I think it might be helpful. I mean, one of the things I'm also thinking about with this is like, not only what is it that makes you, but also how is it that we can make other people as awesome as you? And so I wonder, will you talk just a little bit about how Complex Collective, how that came about? Because I think part of it is that you've done such a great job of unpacking how you became these other things. And to me, that organization is so important and such a vital part of the community in terms of thinking about what it provides. All these things that you've been talking about and the way that CAM is influential. To me, Tone is the same way. And so I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about the formation of that, how that worked, how it was that you got teamed up, how all of those things happened.
And I'll be, I'm always going to be honest about the things I think. And this will be the first time I'm really like speaking on any of this stuff, which I'm fine with. It is what it is. I think it needs to be known. I think that the Tone or the quote unquote collective, I always say that I was a part of the collective. I wasn't a part of Tone. And the reason why I say it is because like it's just a tragic kind of story. A beautiful but tragic story. But that's kind of how these things go. And so the formation of that was, in like so many things. I got an email. I had met, and it's so interesting to talk about these things because like I'm not going to say a lot of names on purpose, and so I hope that's okay with you and other people. But a young lady who I had met who was working at Crosstown at the time, we had started to meet, like become cool. Through me doing some shows at Crosstown. She was working there at the time. And she, at the time, seemed to be very in conflict with Crosstown. I had a very great relationship with Crosstown, the people over there. I didn't really, I understood a little bit what she was saying, but I had no complaints, basically. But I understood their desire to create a space where black artists could just be black artists, right? And not have to kind of do what we were talking about before. It's like fight through all these things. And so I got an email about a meeting that was like happening in like November or something. It was like November 2014. So it was like right around when I was about to graduate. And so I go to this meeting, and it's me, her, and a bunch of other black artists. And everybody's like kind of discussing and fighting over each other about what this could be and what this could look like. And some people didn't make it through the night. Because there's so many concerns, and that's why when we talk about community things, it's like I don't know how much I feel akin to it for real. Like the idea of like the black arts community or whatever it is. It's like everybody has their things that they're trying to do, and there's no consensus. There is no consensus, and so for me, I know what I'm trying to do. And it's the things that we talked about. And so enough people kind of aligned in that way, but enough of us were also frustrated and in conflict. And so I think those people lined up. And that's what we kind of called like the first season of what was the collective. And we started essentially not as a nonprofit, but as like a group, as like kind of like an art collective, again, hence the collective. And we were trying to figure out ways to do that work. And so at the time, I was maybe the most visible artist involved. And so a lot of the early stuff was me having shows or solo shows or group shows or putting together shows or whatever it is. But then also we had people who were fashion designers and like so many other different forms of dancers and filmmakers and all this other stuff. And so like the first few years was us just basically centering around each of those different things. Like, you know, we had it, and what became our programming later, or like the basis for that.
Now, was this there at that same space?
No,
that
we
was
didn't have
right
any
next
space.
to OMG? No.
We didn't have any
Okay,
space.
okay.
And so we were, and this is how we kind of get there is like, okay, let's go to this warehouse and do something. Let's go to 430, you know, down the road and do something. Let's go to what's the little spot downtown, like the photo it's like that, who's that, I forget.
Jack Robinson
Gallery.
Gallery?
Jack Robinson,
something like that. Yeah,
we went down there, so we were hopping around a bunch, and again hinging the events and the programming around the people who we had who were doing those things. So if we had a filmmaker, it's like, hey, let's do a film showing of Doo's work and include a few other people, and let's do a fashion show and have music and all this other stuff, and like reveal such and such's brand new collection that he spent the last 3 months working on, or whatever it is, right? And then like, oh, let's have an exhibition of Lawrence's work, and we'll call it this and call it that and call it this. And so we were hopping all around doing that. And as we were hopping around, as we started to kind of like rise in popularity, you go from these DIY kind of spaces where you just kind of get an empty room, right, to like institutions. And so we started like trying to do partnerships with various institutions in the city. And then that's where like the conflict started to kind of happen, where it was like, we're coming in with these not even radical kind of black thoughts, but just black thoughts, and meeting a ton of resistance. And if we didn't have champions who were also black at high levels within the thing, it just was this headbutting.
Now, just out of curiosity, what form did this resistance take?
Payment, a lot of times, payment, people recognizing our ability to bring people in, which we were very aware of because we'd been hopping so many places. We didn't really have any place consistently to program or to do things. And we were doing a myriad of stuff. We were doing art shows, parties, it was a bunch of stuff. But it was all under the guise of like trying to get black folks together and trying to like get black folks informed about the arts, and also this larger kind of mission of what eventually was the space. And I'm not gonna ever take credit for that part of it. I was just trying to show up and do my work and trying to show up and make sure this thing succeeded. I think the way that I ended up kind of showing up in the organization was very much like a workhorse. And I use that term in retrospect, but at the time I felt like very much a part and very like a part of it. You know what I mean? In a real way and not being used by it. You know what I mean? And I think, we hopped around and again, we were, trying to talk to this institution, that institution, and people thought the ideas were too radical, too this, too that, too gonna upset people, gonna whatever. And it was like, at that time, we weren't really doing shit. You know what I mean? We were just like, just having black shows. You know what I mean? But it was like, to be honest, if you go back and you look at any of these institutions from 2019 prior, you not finna see that at all. Not many of them, right? Like I can pinpoint, and I'm not saying institutions' names on purpose, but I can pinpoint when such and such got a show, when this artist got a show, and how much space, how many months, how many years were in between the next time somebody did, right? I know for me, when I had a solo show at a certain institution, it had been, I don't know how long before, I think it was like a year, 2 years, 3 years before, or like since somebody else black, there was a man had a show in that space. And I knew that there was people in that institution who fought for me to even be able to have that show. And they weren't trying to have it, right? And this is a solo show of my photography, which obviously is going on to do what it did, right? But even in that space, they weren't trying to do it. And they didn't change their mind until they saw how many people we had come into our own space. And so it was always about memberships and always about the photo ops. And then it became about diversity, right? So like once you get into 2020, it's all about diversity and like, oh, like we got all these black people, hundreds of black people in a space. Let's take as many pictures as possible. Now we're diverse, right? Because it had been just old crotchety, white donors who were coming to most of these things because their programming at a lot of the institutions at the time was lackluster and boring and had, again, no competition. So everybody's resting on their laurels or just sitting back like, yeah, we got this large endowment. We're doing this, that, and the other. We don't need to innovate. And so for us, specifically for me as a person who was, at first I was like the creative kind of director of the thing. Then I was like the curator, and then I was like the program director, and like the program director and the curator at the same time, and like just all these different things. So like the visual language and like the arts programming was coming directly from me, right? And so in that space, I'm like thinking about, again, innovation, because we don't have any money, right? And so the only way, and I truly believe this in all the things, it's like the same thing with Derek is like was saying, was like you have to lock into your work. You have to really truly lock into your work, and your work will open the doors for all these other things, right? And so it's like if the programming is the organization, the institution's work, then we have to lock into that. And then we have to come up with compelling and interesting conceptual exhibitions to pair with said programming to not only get people from the community in here, but people, just everybody in here, right? And I think, before we kind of got to the Orange Mountain Gallery, which that's kind of what opened the door for the next door space, we had been, again, hopping around. And so through meeting, through the org kind of meeting Linda Steele, because we became a nonprofit in 2017, late 2017. We spent 2018 programming out of mostly the Orange Mountain Gallery and then doing partnerships with other folks. And at that time, we had maybe switched out. It maybe was like season 3. Like people were just kind of, there was a high turnover rate or whatever, because it was very, very hard work and very passion-based work, and nobody's making any money. And so people wouldn't stick around, right? Like if the fruits didn't bear, the tree didn't bear fruit pretty immediately for them, or they had a bad show, or they just didn't go well, they would kind of leave and, kick our back end on the way out too, because we just all have a tendency to do that as well. And so that's just the thing. It's just like, it just became a thing, right? And as we start to succeed, it's just tricky, because it's like people would leave and then like a big opportunity would happen. And it's like, so now there's like this and so like that kind of continued to happen because we were just on this space of upward mobility. And so this is happening alongside my own upward mobility, which is basically linked to this thing. Because the better I do, the better the thing does, and then the more people are attracted to it, and then we get better people and more talented people and more geniuses, and like all these people kind of come in, and then they're just elevating. We're just kind of constantly elevating. And so we started doing some collaborative stuff with, I believe, Arts Memphis. We had like exhibition. We had a few exhibitions in the Orange Mound kind of gallery space, through Linda Steele and through some of the other folks that are over there, and the names are escaping me right now, but they're very important people as well. But even there, the space was limited. The walls were concrete. Like they were like these walls in here. And so it's like, it becomes kind of like hard display work. ACs come on, make the sticky things, not as sticky. Heat comes on, like these different things, and like access to the space was a thing. And then like our ability to program, it was just always based on, because again, it's a shared space. And then the conversations around like we need our own space start to happen, but also this work is getting too heavy. We need to be able to like take care of ourselves, right? Like everybody's starting to get older and things are going on, responsibilities and stuff. And so in 2018, I think that's when we got like one of the first larger grants. I don't know too many of the ins and outs of the grant things. I chose not to know because I want to focus on the gallery and working with artists and working with community. That was my thing. That's what I rested my hat on or whatever. But I remember there being this discussion about we can either get a space or we can pay everybody. And I think everybody kind of was like, you know what I mean? We were kind of like, well, we get a space, we can do whatever we want every day. And so the young lady who essentially became the ED, or who's like the the head person kind of the thing, fell in love with the spot next door when it was just like carpet and just emptiness in there. And we made a whatever. We didn't purchase it outright, but like we started leasing that space, and spent the first 2 months, 3 months. It was like November, December. I think we made the purchase, like the quote unquote purchase, in like November, December, and January. We were like renovating the inside, turning it into a gallery, turning it into like a mixed use space. And the first exhibition I curated with Grace Stewart, and yeah, that was the legendary kind of like opening night of the complex. And yeah, we had put together all of these performers, put together all of these visual artists, and like all these different things, and like there was just all this stuff, and there was like so many people. Like the photos from it look crazy. But it was this monumental thing. And then there was like the marketing team and those folks and like Unapologetic and some different people had like got together this like big marketing plan for the thing too. So there was just like a lot of synergy from all over like the quote unquote like Black arts community kind of coming together, because now we had a space. And that was the big kind of boom that happened, and that kind of sent ripple effects all through the arts community and all of the institutions as well. And now you have people coming to your shows and looking at your programming and looking at things, because again, the competition and innovation thing, it's like now we're having, again, I'm programming the fuck out of these shows, right? And I think I have a good idea or two, right? And I think I was working with a few people who had some good ideas or two. So we're coming up with really, really dope and innovative ideas that are like transformative. Like I think that first year, specifically for me, that first year was like some of the most transformative shit that I've ever seen in the city of Memphis in terms of the arts, period. I don't think there's nothing like it. And I don't think it'll be years before there is something like that again.
No, me too. I mean, one of the things I love about this is hearing you talk about all of the things that went into it. Mm-hmm. And then also one of the things I loved about it, about that experience was that I remember going in there and saying, "Oh, this is not how I run things."
Yeah,
and I remember just being like, "Oh, there's going to be a roundtable discussion, and it's like the seats are arranged in a circle." And I was like, "What? That's totally outside of my sphere." And I loved how like the way that you would do things, or the way things were happening there at the complex or at Tone, felt so urgent and
Yeah.
so important. And the thing about like people coming together, and if the show was about X, Y, and Z, then we were going to have a roundtable discussion where you would
Yeah.
have poets and you would have playwrights and you would have all these other people that were not necessarily involved in the exhibition per se, but were tangential to it and
Yeah.
were really important to expanding that conversation to having it not just be a bunch of painters sitting around talking to one
Yeah.
another. To me, that all felt really powerful. And then also, I remember several of those conversations, a lot of those roundtable discussions were so vulnerable. You
Yeah.
know, they really, people were really talking about deeply important things and really impactful things. And it felt like this space that was not only a place where people could see people like them, but also to be at ease in a way that you couldn't be in
Yeah.
other spaces. I
Yeah.
mean, to me, that felt really urgent and beautiful.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think like my relationship with things now is obviously like very different, and like because we're in the future, right? So it's like I don't get to talk to people often about that first year. For me, it was very blurry because I was just working so hard. Like because we were programming a lot of exhibitions. We was like having a lot of exhibitions, and we also like in between that like performing, like having performances, like for music, you know, we want to hit everything, right? And so like, and then outside of that, we're like wanting to make a space for every type of black art that there was. So it's like we need a space for dancers, we need a space for writers, we need a space for, you know, everybody. And how do we incorporate them? And like, you know, we talked about like having a round table, you know, and not just being the artist, right? It's like not every artist wants to talk about their work, and I think not every artist is good at talking about their work, you know. And so it's like, how do we position the ones that are, you know, the kind of anchors of this exhibition? And then even like the curators, like I picked all like the guest curators and stuff, and like to be very transparent, like they didn't most of the time didn't hang anything, right? Like they would come in and be a visual representation of what the show was. They didn't pick the artist. They didn't, like, we had all that picked. I picked all that, right? So like I had them, and I would meet a person or like this guy represents this thing. We have this idea over here on you know, our board or whatever of like all the different things we want to do. I think those things would pair up. These are artists that are good for that, and I would make a list of the artists and like reach out to them and get confirmed, you know, different things, and then reach out to this guy like, hey, we have this exhibition about this thing. We think you would be a great, you know, kind of host of this thing. We thought of the kind of guest curators almost as hosts a lot of times. Like it doesn't need to be me speaking about this subject, or because that's the thing. It's like in a normal institution, it's like the same people kind of representing this thing despite what the subject matter is. And I think that can get tricky sometimes. And so you have like an old white woman speaking about whoever's issues, right? Like a Latin American show or whatever it is. It's like, no, like let's bring in a Latin American whatever it is, right? And so I think for us, it was like if we had a show that was about, I remember there being one show that's like very kind of controversial. It's like sex and religion, and just talking about like, you know, sexuality and religion and sex and shame and guilt and all these things like wrapped together in the black community, and like how taboo of an issue that is. And so we picked people from the organization who were like church going folks who had a religious kind of way of being, but were also artists and also queer, right? So it's like, let's hear their story. I don't need to be the representative of that, right? I could, you know, now is who I am today, but back then it was like, no, let's find people who fit all these things and make them the face of this thing, and they work directly with the artists after all of the quote unquote bureaucracy has happened, right? So like I might send out to this and to that and this, but then like they're the one kind of communicating with them, and I'm communicating with the curator and like kind of passing information down to them, and they're building a synergy and like a connectivity and working together, and I'm just kind of overseeing it as the program director, right? And so it's like that's kind of what was going on. And I think just hearing you talk about it, going back to what I said, is like I don't get to talk about this stuff with a lot of people. I think everybody who I know who left with me, right, when we left, we have a very it's a very complex relationship with the work, the space, and the people that were involved in it. It is not always good. I mean, most times it's not good. And so, but I do remember that first year being again, 2019 being the funnest, being the hardest, but being the most transformative to so many people. I watched so many artists become who they are today in that year. And I don't get to ever pat myself on the back about it. Or my loved ones or the people who are still close to me that were around for that time period, because it's something that we don't want to be necessarily connected to today. Because it's something different. It doesn't really exist anymore. But towards the end, we just washed our hands with it and got away from it. But the early times is something that I'm proud about, that I feel a lot of, love for and towards. And I watch people become who they are. For me, like finding them on Instagram, or like meeting them at an exhibition, or going to like a student show, or going to something at MCA, and like putting Maya, like Maya saying to somebody who's like doing all these things, it's like they weren't in any exhibitions before that. Like even Ahmad, like watching where Ahmad is now versus where they were at the very beginning when I put them in, like, I think that was maybe their second show. And so it's like putting them in that and then watching them like evolve, like, and watching like the work be this big, and like them just evolving and branching out. Now they're in grad school doing these things, and like watching Maya, like not saying like Maya was going to do what Maya was going to do, but again, having a space to do these things, and like thinking about artists. Like I remember, we had a bunch of fine art shows, and then people who were graphic artists were like, yo, what the fuck? And it's like, all right, now we need to, all right, Tunki, come over, Maya, come over, like Ahmad. That's how they became in the shows. It's like we were listening to the critiques that were valid critiques, you know what I mean? And then like even later, like I think one of the last shows before COVID was what's that? The Black Animation Show. And we were talking about how like so many Black people's first introductions to the art is through anime. Is through that world, and drawing like I did, drawing Dragon Ball Z characters, drawing these things. It's like, how can we present this thing that is thought of as not fine art in a fine art context? And like now you get Gray in there, and like people who are making comic books, and all these things are like bringing all this work in. It was like, that was what it was about to me. And being, again, the program director, being curator, being like these things directly, involved with arts, that's all I want to kind of do. And that's what like I drug myself out of bed every day to do, because I knew how important that work was. And despite the personalities that I might have had to deal with along the way, or whatever it was, or like leadership, or any of these things that rip apart the fabric of something like that, it was worth kind of dealing with, because I knew that we were doing transformative stuff. And I knew that, and this is the unfortunate thing too, on the tragic side of it, I stayed for much longer than I wanted to after things had maybe hit a certain point, because I knew that if I pulled away, it would end. And when I pulled away, it did. You know what I mean? And so that's the weird kind of sad guilt that I have about it, because it's like, how valuable you are to something. And like even just hearing you describe it, like I was like sitting over here like kind of like emotional inside, like, damn, you know what I mean? Like this could have went so much different, because it was so, but it also may be something that bright doesn't get to shine forever, right? Like, and it did what it was supposed to do, right? Like maybe it did, right? And maybe there'll be something like that 5 years from now, 10 years from now. I think there are people who were like-minded like myself, who left or walked away and got away from that thing, but still have the passion and still have the heart to affect the change that they were affecting in that space.
Oh, that is such a, like, it's almost like that it's 3:00 and it's time for us to stop.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Here's one of the things that I'm super excited about,
Yeah.
Lawrence, is that you are young.
Yes.
And I still have some years in me.
Yes.
And so I look forward to doing a part 2 sometime down the road when the pendulum has swung yet again.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming in and hanging out with me. It's been a real treat. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you allowing me the platform to yap all this time.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you coming in.
Appreciate you.
And that was the third of 3 interviews that I recorded with Lawrence Matthews. That interview was recorded on March 26th, 2025. I'm sure that one day down the road, Lawrence and I will sit down and do another one of these. Until then, thank you so much for listening.